It was one of those rare nights when a single sentence managed to shift the energy of an entire room. A single line that sliced through the noise with more precision than a dozen debates. Barack Obama, steady as ever, delivered a remark that Donald Trump never wanted dragged into daylight. The irony was almost cruel. It was about Trump's marriage. The moment the words slipped from Obama's mouth, the atmosphere in the hall seemed to tighten. You could almost feel the crowd inhaling at once. Cameras zoomed closer, searching for every flicker of emotion. Faces lit up with disbelief, half shocked, half thrilled. And backstage, witnesses later recalled, Trump's expression grew darker, his jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing. This wasn't banter. It wasn't a cheap laugh line. It was deliberate, a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Proof that sometimes the sharpest truths don't need shouting. They just need to be spoken at the exact right time. The exchange unfolded on a stage meant for policy discussion, a nationally televised town hall broadcast across the country. The moderators, thinking they were guiding the evening toward another round of immigration talking points and predictable answers, unknowingly set the stage for a cultural flashpoint. The question was straightforward. How does one reconcile harsh rhetoric on immigrants with traditional family values? That was the spark. And stepping through the door it opened was Obama, measured, calm, unwilling to pull his punches where they land the hardest. He leaned into the microphone, paused just long enough to make every viewer lean forward, and then reminded the nation that some of the harshest language about immigrants came from an administration where the First Lady herself was an immigrant. That was the trigger. The audience cracked before Trump could react. Gasps, laughter, applause. Even cheers rolled like a wave through the auditorium. But Obama didn't stop there. With the same unshaken composure, he added that marriages, whether inside the White House or in any neighborhood across America, must rest on three pillars: respect, trust, and honesty. The second line was the one that burned. He hadn't named names, but he didn't have to. Everyone knew who and what he meant. It was more than politics. It was personal. For weeks, the media had been buzzing with rumors of tension between Trump and Melania. Awkward hand swats, stiff body language, endless tabloid speculation about distance in their relationship. Obama didn't invent those whispers. He simply drew them into the open, merging private rumor with public accountability. In that moment, politics and personal life collided in front of millions. The reaction was immediate and visceral. Some people in the crowd laughed nervously, shocked that Obama had actually gone there. Others erupted into applause, as if they'd been waiting years for someone to articulate the thought out loud. The moderators froze, unsure whether to redirect or let the scene breathe. And in homes from coast to coast, viewers leaned closer to their screens. This wasn't campaign season noise. This wasn't the usual back and forth insult. This was a former president, known for his composure, laying down a line that was impossible to brush aside. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, aides whispered that Trump's face turned a furious shade of red. He muttered to an advisor, calling the comment disgusting, totally out of line. But even before he could storm onto cameras to fire back, the clip was already spreading like wildfire. And the sting wasn't just in the words. It was in how believable they felt. Everyone knows what it's like when respect falters in a relationship, when trust cracks, when the foundation trembles. Hearing those concepts directed at the president's marriage, live on air, made it impossible to dismiss as just politics. By the time the town hall wrapped, social media had exploded. Twitter was alive with hashtags. Late-night hosts were already scripting their jokes. Cable anchors lined up talking points. The phrase about respect, trust, and honesty ricocheted across living rooms, coffee shops, and break rooms. It was repeated in barbershops and classrooms, dissected in think pieces, memed on Instagram. The humor was undeniable, but beneath it lingered a heavier truth, the kind that presses down because it puts into words what people already suspect, but rarely hear said aloud. The town hall itself hadn't been designed to make headlines. It was staged inside a convention center in Phoenix, Arizona, filled with rows of carefully selected attendees: students, small business owners, parents, retirees. The structure was simple: audience questions, politician answers, a broadcast that gave the illusion of direct democracy. On paper, it should have been forgettable. But when timing and precision collide, ordinary nights turn historic. The moderator, a seasoned anchor, had leaned forward with a grin, asking Obama whether Trump's anti-immigrant rhetoric could ever align with the values of family unity. The pause that followed felt electric. Obama adjusted his microphone, let the silence stretch just enough, then spoke with a calmness that made the words sting sharper. He pointed to the contradiction. A White House railing against immigrants, while at its center stood a woman who had crossed the Atlantic and made America her home. He never mentioned Melania by name. He didn't need to. The implication was undeniable. And then came the pivot: marriage. Not just politics, not just policy, but something deeper. He reminded everyone that a true partnership isn't about optics, or show, or spotlight. It's about trust, respect, honesty. Simple words, yet devastating in context. The crowd's reaction said it all, laughter bubbling into applause, disbelief turning into a roar. On television, it played like a scene from theater, part political drama, part reality TV. Behind the curtain, Trump reportedly sat glued to the monitor, fists clenched around his chair. "He's going after my family, he muttered in disbelief. For him, it wasn't only about politics. It was humiliation. And humiliation, especially in front of millions, cuts deeper than policy critiques ever could. But timing was everything. For weeks, the press had speculated about Melania's absences, replayed clips of awkward public encounters, dissected body language. Obama hadn't invented the narrative. He had simply woven it into the national conversation with perfect timing. Now whispers had become a public statement, and the whole country was listening. The audience reflected the nation's split. A woman in the front row covered her mouth, whispering, "Did he just say that?" A man a few rows back stood clapping proudly. College students in the upper seats raised their phones, capturing shaky footage that would go viral within minutes. The hashtags trended almost instantly. #Obama streaks back. #respect and trust. #First Lady immigrant. Supporters celebrated the honesty. Critics fumed about the audacity. And neutrals admitted, regardless of politics, it was impossible to look away. What made the moment potent wasn't just the critique. It was the relatability. People weren't thinking only about immigration policy. They were reflecting on their own relationships, on the fragility of respect, on the hypocrisy of leaders who say one thing but live another. Obama's delivery transformed politics into a mirror, forcing people to look at themselves as much as at their president. The moderators scrambled to regain footing, nervously thanking Obama and trying to pivot. But by then, the clip had already been sealed into history, replayed and dissected before the event even ended. Organizers knew immediately. No one would be talking about immigration policy anymore. They'd be talking about this moment for days. And the real story wasn't only Obama's words. It was Trump's reaction after the lights dimmed. Advisors urged him to frame it as a cheap shot, but his anger ran deeper. He raged that Obama was jealous, finished, desperate. Yet the power of the comment lay in what couldn't be spun. If Obama had yelled, Trump could have dismissed him as unhinged. But the calm, almost professorial tone made it sting worse. It sounded less like an insult and more like a quiet diagnosis. Diagnoses are harder to fight. That's why the clip spread like wildfire. People didn't just replay it for the punchline. They replayed it because of how it was said. Obama's voice carried like a teacher's lesson or a pastor's counsel, not like a politician's attack. It echoed with authenticity, the kind of truth that feels undeniable. Late that night, CNN and MSNBC aired the exchange repeatedly, dissecting every angle. Fox News, meanwhile, condemned it as beneath the dignity of a former president, calling it disrespectful to the First Lady. But by then, the narrative had already taken root. Whether you saw it as a low blow or overdue honesty, the takeaway was clear. Obama had landed a strike that felt personal, and the nation couldn't stop talking about it. The aftermath was relentless. Obama's remark didn't fade when the cameras turned off. It multiplied. The line replayed across networks, reshared on social media, dissected in op-eds. Each repetition gave it new life, transforming what should have been a fleeting moment at a town hall into the defining political story of the week. Analysts filled panels, each weighing in on the blow. On one conservative-leaning show, a Republican strategist grudgingly admitted, "I don't care for Obama, but I'll be honest, he struck where it hurt." And you can see it in Trump's face, the way he can't hide the anger. Across the table, A Democratic commentator responded. That's the difference. Obama didn't need to shout. He didn't even say Melania's name. He simply laid out the truth and trusted people to connect the dots. Almost instantly, Melania herself became a trending topic, her name plastered across headlines and timelines. Reporters scrambled to predict whether she'd respond. Would she release a statement? Would she make a pointed public appearance beside her husband? The silence that followed only deepened the intrigue. Each day without a comment stoked speculation. By morning, the Arizona Republic ran with the headline, Obama's one-liner on marriage rocks the White House. Beneath it, an editorial compared Obama's discipline with Trump's volatility. One man understands the weight of words. The other still wrestles with his own temper. That contrast, more than anything, was the real victory for Obama. He didn't insult Melania. He didn't attack Trump directly. He simply highlighted the contradiction and let the hypocrisy reveal itself. Even those normally indifferent to politics couldn't avoid talking about it. In a small diner outside Flagstaff, two men sparred over their eggs and coffee. One argued it was unfair to drag Melania into the mess, while the other shot back that Trump himself had branded his presidency on family values, so his own marriage was fair ground. A waitress later told a journalist, I've worked here for 15 years, and I've never heard customers debate politics this much. What Obama managed to do was transform a standard policy question into a cultural flashpoint. His words weren't just political lines. They became echoes, reverberating long after they were spoken. And echoes, once set loose, can't be pulled back. Still, the story didn't end with Obama's calm delivery. The next act belonged to Trump, and the rage he carried from backstage onto the public stage. When Obama invoked respect, trust, and honesty, it was like striking a match in a room full of dry brush. The reaction wasn't quiet. It ignited. Some audience members clapped instantly, almost relieved that someone had finally voiced what they'd long suspected. Others laughed, but it was nervous laughter, the kind that acknowledges a truth too sharp to dismiss. Camera operators caught it all. A young woman in the third row gasping, covering her mouth, her wide eyes darting toward the man beside her. College students in the back howling, phones lifted high to capture clips for social media. An older man near the front leaning forward, nodding slowly, savoring the remark like a connoisseur enjoying a glass of wine. The mood in that hall shifted like a tide. At first, it had been polite, orderly, the kind of quiet you expect at a political forum. After Obama's line, the air cracked open. Side conversations sparked even as moderators fumbled to regain control. Whispers slipped into microphones. That's about Melania, someone muttered. Another voice added, oh, he actually went there. Viewers at home weren't just hearing Obama, they were witnessing a live crowd processing the moment in real time. And that collective shock, caught on camera, made the clip viral. Social media magnified it instantly. Within minutes, short clips spread across Twitter with captions like Obama doesn't miss, and that look on her face says everything. A 15-second video highlighting the audience's laughter racked up hundreds of thousands of shares before the town hall even wrapped. Entire threads analyzed facial expressions and body language, replaying Obama's calm delivery beside the crowd's eruption. At home, reactions varied. In living rooms across the suburbs, families argued over whether Obama had crossed the line. Parents fielded questions from their kids. Why was marriage suddenly being discussed in a debate about immigration? In barbershops in Detroit and diners in Oklahoma City, televisions replayed the moment as patrons debated, half laughing, half serious, whether Obama had just delivered the political punch of the year. Reporters present described the sound in the hall as unlike anything they'd heard at such an event. Laughter and applause that swelled and refused to die down. For several seconds, the moderators couldn't even move the conversation forward. That kind of reaction can't be scripted. It happens only when someone finally says what's been left unsaid for too long. And that, more than anything, made the moment stick. If the audience had remained silent, if the applause had been polite, it would have been just another clever remark. But their raw, unfiltered response validated Obama's words. It told viewers across the nation, you're not imagining this. We all see it too. That, insiders later said, is what rattled Trump most. The clips weren't simply showing Obama. They were showing Americans laughing at him. For a president obsessed with control and image, becoming the punchline was devastating. One aide who had been inside the hall recalled later, the noise was so loud, It carried through the corridors. He lost the room. And when you lose the room on live TV, you lose the country for that night. By morning, newspapers nationwide splashed images of the audience frozen mid-laughter. The story wasn't framed as an attack. It was framed as recognition, a shared cultural moment. The applause and the laughter weren't just reactions. They were judgment. And once laughter carries truth, it's almost impossible to erase. Clips of his furious rebuttal circulated alongside Obama's original line. One viral edit juxtaposed Obama calmly saying, "Marriage is about respect, trust, and honesty," with Trump's red-faced retort, "Disgusting, out of line. Nobody talks about my family." The contrast was stark, and the internet did what it always does, turning it into memes. A group of college students in Austin posted a reaction video of themselves watching the exchange, pausing to laugh each time Trump's voice cracked. By midnight, #Triggered Trump was trending nationwide. At the White House, aides scrambled to contain the fallout. Some urged a shift back to policy, suggesting a statement on immigration reform to reclaim the narrative. Others pushed to spotlight Melania, portraying her as unfairly attacked. Trump dismissed both ideas, demanding to speak for himself. "Nobody puts words in my mouth," he snapped. The irony was that Melania herself remained silent. No tweets, no appearances. Her silence became its own story, fueling speculation that perhaps Obama's words had cut closer to the bone than anyone wanted to admit. By dawn, the moment wasn't just a headline. It was a headline. Newsrooms from Phoenix to Washington opened with the same footage. Obama's calm remark, Trump's heated outburst, the crowd's laughter sandwiched between them. Cable networks replayed it in loops. CNN slowed down Obama's pause before the words, "The First Lady herself is an immigrant," highlighting the crowd's gasp like a buzzer-beating shot. MSNBC invited body language experts to analyze Trump's expressions. Fox News denounced Obama's line as unfair, but even they couldn't resist replaying the footage, because every repetition drew eyeballs. And repetition is what made the moment unstoppable. Each replay carried Obama's words further. Each Trump rebuttal dragged the conversation back to marriage, not immigration. The harder he pushed back, the more firmly the moment cemented itself in public memory. When Trump lashed out, labeling Obama pathetic, the strain in his voice revealed more than he intended. Observers noticed his jaw tightening each time he referenced Melania, as though every syllable carried the weight of personal humiliation. Even Fox News, while attempting to shield him from criticism, could not avoid running the clip repeatedly. Their defense of Trump paradoxically kept amplifying the very narrative they wished to bury. The more they played it, the harder it was for viewers to ignore. Late-night comedy programs wasted no time seizing the moment. On The Tonight Show, the host cracked a punchline that had the crowd erupting. Obama says marriage rests on respect, trust, and honesty. Trump says it rests on separate bedrooms and a prenup thick enough to stop a bullet. The audience howled, and the joke ricocheted across YouTube by morning. Stephen Colbert took it further, brandishing a satirical marriage handbook labeled respect, trust, and honesty. 3 words that will never be spoken inside the White House. The crowd roared again, and within hours, social media platforms carried the bit into millions of feeds. Hashtags multiplied like wildfire. #respect trust honesty. #trigger Trump. #Obama McDrop. TikTok users created endless loops. Obama's calm delivery juxtaposed against Trump's red-faced outbursts at rallies. One viral post, stitched together by a college sophomore in Phoenix, topped 6 million views in less than a day. But it wasn't just comedy fueling the fire. It was the serious commentary that followed. Opinion columns filled national newspapers, each dissecting the clash in their own way. The Washington Post declared, "Obama calls out hypocrisy. Trump falters." Over at the Wall Street Journal, a conservative columnist criticized Obama for dragging Melania into politics but begrudgingly conceded that the precision of the remark cornered Trump. On podcasts, analysts compared Obama's timing to that of a prizefighter, waiting for just the right opening to throw a counterpunch. Others reflected on how the stark contrast between Obama's composure and Trump's fury reminded voters why many still long for Obama's measured style of leadership. The White House scrambled to regain footing. The next morning, a spokesperson made the rounds on television, labeling Obama's remarks a disgraceful cheap shot. Yet with every complaint, producers kept looping the town hall footage behind them, replaying the line again and again. ironically undermining their outrage. Melania's silence deepened the intrigue. Each day she withheld comment. Speculation intensified. Talk shows dug up old clips of her swatting away Trump's hand or looking distant during public ceremonies. Tabloids plastered covers with headlines like, "Silent First Lady. No defense for Donald." Fair or not, her quiet demeanor seemed to validate the notion that Obama's words had struck something raw. By the weekend, the spectacle showed no signs of slowing. Saturday Night Live lampooned the exchange with a sketch featuring Obama calmly sipping tea while Trump shouted about fake respect. The crowd in the studio howled, and the parody pulled millions of views online. Analysts warned that while it looked like entertainment, the frenzy had consequences. Every replay of Obama's line was time stolen from Trump's policy agenda. The president, usually skilled at seizing the narrative, was no longer driving the story. Obama was. One advisor gingerly suggested pivoting to immigration policy, highlighting the new bill before Congress. Trump snapped. Nobody cares about policy. They care about that line. Respect, trust, honesty. Like he knows anything about my marriage. Disgusting. Silence blanketed the room. Another aide proposed turning the spotlight onto Melania's immigrant journey, framing her as resilient and hardworking. Trump cut that off too. So now we make her the story. You want people digging into her again? Worse. Mark Reynolds, his chief of staff, massaged his temples. He'd seen this cycle before. The president obsessing over a slight, forcing staff into an impossible scramble. In private later, Reynolds sighed to a colleague. It's not Obama's words. It's the laughter. He can't handle the country laughing at him. Meanwhile, Melania's silence became heavier by the day. She canceled a children's hospital visit, ducked out of a White House reception before cameras arrived, and was spotted reading in the garden with headphones on. She wasn't angry. One aide said quietly. She was distant, like she didn't want to be part of any of it. At dinner one evening, Trump pressed her directly. Why don't you say something? Defend me. They're attacking you too. She reportedly set down her fork and said only, I don't want to get involved, before leaving the table. To Trump, her refusal cut deeper than the headlines. Leaks from inside the West Wing painted a picture of dysfunction. Anonymous aides described late-night tirades about Obama and staff forced to rewatch the clip in morning briefings. One insider confessed he's fixated. Every meeting starts with that video. Frustration spread among senior officials desperate to move on. During a particularly tense Oval Office session, Reynolds finally snapped. Mr. President, the more we talk about it, the bigger it gets. If you want it to go away, we have to stop feeding it. Trump glared back, his voice icy. So you want me to let him win? You think I should just let him humiliate me? No one answered. They didn't need to. Everyone knew ignoring an insult wasn't in his nature. In Ohio, a union hall that usually discussed contracts turned into a political roundtable. One worker argued, families are off limits. Another shot back, not if you parade them around for political points. You can't have it both ways. Voices rose, heads nodded. The debate was no longer about two politicians. It was about what people expected from leadership. In Arizona, at a community forum on immigration, a young mother stood and said, when Obama talked about respect and trust, I thought about my husband and me. We worked hard, raised our kids, and respect kept us strong. Hearing a president's marriage questioned, it reminded me they're human too. Her words drew applause from the crowd. Online, arguments raged. A Facebook group for parents in Pennsylvania saw a post. Obama should have left Melania out of it. Disrespectful. Within minutes, replies poured in. He didn't insult her. He exposed Trump's hypocrisy. One man wrote. Another added, if your marriage is solid, why get defensive? The thread spiraled past 2,000 comments before moderators shut it down. Talk radio lit up as well. In Dallas, a conservative caller fumed. Obama can't stand Trump's success. That's why he attacked Melania. The host agreed, calling it beneath the dignity of a former president. But in Portland, a liberal station laughed it off. Obama didn't attack her. He reminded everyone what marriage should be, respect. Trump made himself the punchline. Callers piled on, with one woman noting, my husband and I both said, that's exactly what's missing in the White House. Even churches wove it into sermons. In Flagstaff, Pastor Raymond Clark told his congregation, respect, trust, honesty. These are not just the cornerstones of marriage, but of leadership, of community itself. Congregants nodded, the line echoing in their minds as they left the pews. When respect, trust, and honesty vanish, whether inside a household or at the highest levels of government, the foundation begins to crack, and soon everything else tumbles. In churches, congregants murmured amen as preachers tied the debate to moral lessons. In barber shops and salons, the controversy turned into something like theater. In Milwaukee, a barber replayed the clip on his phone while trimming a customer's fade. "Watch this," he chuckled, rewinding Obama's line about the essence of marriage. The shop roared with laughter when Trump's heated response rolled. "Man's paper thin." One customer snorted. Another counted. "Or maybe he's just protecting his wife." The barber shrugged, smiling. "Either way, this beats any TV drama I've seen this week." The deeper people dug into the discussion, the more it revealed. For some, the issue was hypocrisy. How Trump could spend years vilifying immigrants while being married to one. For others, it was about the very meaning of marriage itself. What respect and trust actually look like when lived out, and what happens when those qualities disappear. For many more, it became about leadership, the stark contrast between a figure who stayed composed and one who cracked under the pressure of a single line. By the week's end, public opinion surveys confirmed what the laughter and debates had already suggested. A poll conducted by an Arizona university asked respondents if they agreed with Obama's statement about respect, trust, and honesty. 70% said yes. When asked if Trump had overreacted, 55% answered without hesitation, absolutely. The numbers didn't amount to political disaster, but they underscored something undeniable. Obama's remark had touched a nerve. The hypocrisy angle was unavoidable. Trump had built his brand by railing against immigrants, painting them as criminals and outsiders. Yet the woman he presented as the face of his family was an immigrant herself. Obama's point cut through with surgical precision. As one columnist in the Los Angeles Times wrote, "You cannot condemn immigrants on Monday and celebrate your immigrant wife on Tuesday. It doesn't work like that. And the public knows it." What heightened the impact was the stark visual contrast between the two men. On one side stood Obama, calm, deliberate, almost professorial. On the other, Trump, red-faced, loud, gesturing sharply, words tumbling over themselves in anger. The side-by-side images became a moral mirror. Americans couldn't help but ask themselves, which man embodied leadership? Even in conservative spaces, cracks appeared. A Christian radio host in Kansas City, while pledging his support for Trump, admitted on air, "Obama was right about one thing. Marriage is built on trust. That's God's design. And if that's missing at the top, it's fair to point it out." His phone lines lit up. Some callers outraged, others agreeing, but every conversation circled back to those same three values. For others, the marriage angle wasn't the point at all. It was about consistency and leadership. How could a president denounce immigrants publicly while relying on immigration in his own household? How could he campaign on family values while presenting a marriage that often seemed fractured? These contradictions led many to conclude that Obama's line wasn't a cheap shot, but a necessary truth spoken out loud. The ripple effect stretched even further. Couples watching at home found themselves having quiet conversations about their own relationships. Parents used the moment to explain to their children why honesty matters, even when it's uncomfortable. Local leaders referenced the town hall in speeches, reminding audiences, respect begins at home. Without it there, it can't exist anywhere else. And that was Obama's real victory. He didn't win by embarrassing Trump or dragging Melania into politics. He won by elevating the discussion, using a political stage to remind people of a universal principle. Without respect, trust, and honesty, no relationship, be it personal or political, can endure. The irony was that he never shouted, never hurled insults, never even spoke Trump's name directly. He simply told a truth the public already suspected. And the silence that followed carried as much power as the words themselves. In that silence, people filled the blanks with their own stories, their struggles, their disappointments, their yearning for leaders who lived the virtues they preached. The impact lingered long after the camera stopped rolling. Weeks later, the bruise remained visible on the national conversation. Tender, unforgettable. Obama had done more than fluster Trump on live television. He had redirected the discussion away from immigration statistics and toward something far more human. the contradictions we live with, the values we profess, and the truths we can't mask. Yet the most lasting effect wasn't on either man, it was on the public. Across living rooms, classrooms, and community spaces, people were reminded of a simple, universal truth. Marriages aren't performances, leadership isn't theater, and values can't be faked. Respect is non-negotiable, trust can't be counterfeited, and honesty will eventually reveal itself, whether you want it to or not. That's why the moment stayed alive. Not because it embarrassed a president, but because it held a mirror up to everyone watching.